rowing.
Hello, welcome to Walton Rowing Club in Surrey for the last of our 3 qualifying rounds in this year's Leyland Daf Power Sprint Championship. On this stretch of the River Thames, which runs through the borough of Elmbridge, crews from London and the South East will be battling for the remaining places in the national final at Peterborough. But the competition's going to be tough, because over the past 2 years, it's from this region that our champions have emerged. Rory Henderson of Imperial College is looking to regain the sculling title he won in 1987, whilst the women's 4 from Tideway Scullers are aiming to recapture their championship of 2 years ago. In the 8s, Tideway Scullers are in action again, this time as defending champions. And amongst their opposition are the University of London, winners in 1987 and runners-up 12 months ago. And in the Channel 4 Challenge on the concept ergometer, Canadian Norm Rockosh, last year's winner, makes his reappearance. So some really tough racing in prospect. Daniel Topolsky, it's not going to be an easy task in any of the categories.
No, well, in the single scull we've mentioned Rory Henderson, who must be favourites, but in the 8s we're going to have some fantastic racing. The University of London, who are very, very strong this year, and the Cambridge University boat race crew, rowing as Goldie. They've got the massive Toby Backhouse sitting in the middle of their boat. He's nearly 17 stone, enormous guy. And in the women's 4s, some internationals there in the Kingston boat and in the Tideway Scullers boat. So I think a good day.
Well, conditions are pretty well perfect, aren't they? The course is nice and straight, but the river's very busy.
Well, there are a lot of little cruisers going up and down, and that's making the water quite bumpy for some of the crews. And for their blade work, for the scullers particularly, it's going to be quite a test of their watermanship, I think.
Thanks, Dan. Well, the 8s are starting to line up on the stake boat, so let me give you a brief reminder of the target for all of today's crews. We begin with the heats in which the men's scullers, women's coxed 4s and men's 8s will as usual be racing against the clock. With Dan in the commentary box is David Goldstrom.
In the opening heat and under clear blue skies, the graduates of King's College London, over on the far side, found themselves locked together with the Furnival Club 8 from Hammersmith, experiencing power sprint for the very first time. Bow to the line, it was the students who got there first by a mere 100th of a second. Stroke, John Rawlinson and his crew setting the time for the others to beat. The Cambridgeshire men of Rob Roy, who finished 4th in last year's Power Sprint Championship, just off the podium, went a full 3.5 seconds quicker in Heat 3, a time which their local boathouse rivals Cambridge 99 simply couldn't match. So Heat number 5, with the draw bringing together the champions of the past 2 seasons. University of London, winners in 87, with Canada's Norm Rockosh, the ergometer champion at 6, sitting 2 back from his stroke man, Jonathan Hulls, who learned his rowing at Hampton School. Scullers, on the far side, the defending champions from Chiswick, on paper, perhaps not quite as strong as last year.
Well, we've got 3 of last year's crew, possibly 4 if we get through this round. If we get through to the final, we could have a 4th back. So it's a very different crew. Last year, we trained for this event specifically over about 8-week period, whereas this year, it's quite a scratch crew.
A rather uncharacteristically hesitant start there for UL. Boat rolling around, which indicates very tricky water. Tideway Scullers on the far side, they look much sharper and more aggressive. They're settling down to a 44 strokes a minute rate behind John Beattie. Big experienced crew there from Tideway Scullers, but very rough water. UL looking much less happy than their rivals in these conditions. They're lower at about 41 strokes a minute. And Scullers seem to have the edge.
Coming to a halfway, quicker than Rob Roy though, but not much in it, just about 1/4 of a second.
Scullers have nice length there, oars well parallel, and they're moving very fluently at about 42 strokes a minute now, rowing in their yellow plastic German Empacher boat and American plastic oars. UL looking a bit more positive now over the second half after that shaky start. They're fighting back hard, Tideway Scullers just got the edge there, hanging on to that slight advantage.
Scullers on the far side now getting the call over UL and look to take first blood over their great rivals, and indeed they get there faster than Rob Roy to take over the lead.
Scullers might be lacking a bit in practice, but I think that was a very fine opener for them.
And UL just half a second behind in second place. So with one heat to come, exactly a second covering the top four, but with only the first 6 to qualify for the Royals, the destiny of Thames Tradesmen and Kingston now in the hands of today's hosts, Walton rowing on the far side, and Goldie, the full Cambridge University boat race crew, stroked today by their president, Matthew Britton, facing his cox, the American Lee Weiss. Walton, perhaps surprisingly the heavier crew, 14 3/4 stone their average, £3 per man heavier.
Can't make any mistakes on these starts in 500-metre sprinting. Watch Goldie go off with those 3 long strokes drawn out, and then they start to wind it up, winding it up to 45 strokes a minute. Walton on the far side, settling down to a good 42. Like most crews now, they're using plastic American-made oars. And unusual for an 8, their cox is lying down in the bows of the boat. Walton doing an excellent job, in fact. They're holding this big Cambridge crew.
And coming to our checkpoint, that time of Tideway Scullers there on the left, and they're slower by about 3/4 of a second, so both of these crews down need to pick it up now.
Yes, into the second half. This is where I'd expect the Cambridge crew to really start moving to show that power that they've got. But Walton really at 40 are looking very, very mature. Brian McMullen stroking very nicely, looking across at his oar, setting a nice rhythm. And Cambridge at 42, perhaps looking a bit more hurried and a little short forward. But they're getting past, they're getting away. That power is really beginning to tell.
And Goldie now by a couple of men, 1/4 of a length, and pulling out their advantage and chasing that time of Scullers on the left. And they haven't quite done that. They're 3/4 of a second down, and they didn't really pick up too much.
I think they were a bit surprised by Walton's very fast takeoff at the start.
But Goldie amongst the 6 qualifiers for the row-offs, behind the 2 London clubs who head the 3 Cambridge crews, with Walton pushing out Thames Tradesmen to take the 6th spot.
So some terrific racing in prospect for the row-offs. Well, 12 months ago, the women's coxed 4 from the Lee in East London finished runners-up in the power sprint competition. So as they prepared for this year's event, we wondered how they fit rowing into their daily lives. Dan Topolsky now reports from Hackney.
During the week after a full day's work, the crew gathers at the boathouse at around 6:30 for the evening's outing, as well as the fitness training they do in the gym. 5'6" and 9.5 stone, stroke Lorna Rundle, who sets the rhythm of the boat, works as a financial advisor in the West End of London.
I started rowing because my dad rowed, and he tried to get me down to cox because they're always short of coxswains down here. And he persuaded me with lemonade and blackcurrant, etc. Then when I started school, rowing was one of the main sports, and I came down with the school.
Behind her at 3 is Rebecca Holmes, who, like Lorna, is an under-23 international.
I work for an advertising contractor who sell advertising space outside on billboards and on bus shelters. Basically, I collect money from the agencies and put it onto our computer system.
Hands on, ready.
Janice Ross at 2 provides the strength, 5'10" and 11 stone. An international rugby player, she combines her work in the architects department of Waltham Forest Council with both sports.
I train Monday, Tuesday and Thursday down here. I go rugby training on Wednesday night, and then at the weekends it's Saturday morning, 2 sessions, Sunday morning, and then I usually go and play rugby in the afternoon.
Lorraine Kay in the bow is the lightest and most experienced oarswoman, having rowed on the Lee since she was 12.
Where I work is a family business. It's a taxi garage, London cabs. We run a fleet of them, so it's quite involved. It's mainly office work, looking after the drivers and bookkeeping, general office duties, sometimes helping outside.
Under the eye of their coach, Katie Ball, herself a former Olympic oarswoman, the crew try to work as a single unit. At stroke, Lorna Rundle dictates the race strategy. She needs acute racing instincts and the mental toughness to change gear and inflict a killer burst at the critical moment. Behind her, Rebecca, Janice and Lorraine must pick up that rhythm in precise unison and provide the power and the skill to translate Lorna's plan. Completing the crew and lying down in the bows is 13-year-old Adam O'Neill, who coordinates the race plan, keeps everything flowing smoothly and makes sure the boat is running straight.
Well, with the lead drawn to race in the final heat here at Walton, the early pace in the women's fours was set by Putney Town, whose 4 women only took up the sport of rowing 2 years ago. Louise Hobden leading the crew at stroke. In the next heat, Thames Tradesmen, finalists a year ago, went almost 5 seconds quicker, with Californian Martha Plessis at stroke dictating the race plan. Whilst in Heat 3, the lower rate set by dental student Kyra Howe for her University of London crew left them a 2 3/4 down at the line. Heat 5, City of Cambridge on the far side versus the champions of 2 years ago. Tyway Scullers, who only arrived back at midnight last night after racing yesterday at Ghent in Belgium. Against them, the Cambridge women, Elizabeth Widdowson there at 2 with the war paint, Lisa Silk at stroke.
Those two as Tideway Scullers. They're a big, strong, experienced crew. Their stern pair are 2 members of Britain's Olympic 4, which came 6th in Seoul. On the far side, Cambridge, not being intimidated off the start at least. They're off at 46, but they're not lengthening out. They're staying short and jabby. And here on the near side, you can see Tideway Scullers settling into a good, very powerful rhythm there at the finish, using their power through the stroke. And that in sprint racing is what it's all about. City of Cambridge not really producing that power as effectively. It's a little bit up and down, and Scullers have a good edge there.
And this looks to be much faster, and indeed it is at the half, 2 seconds up on Tradesmen.
Tideway Scullers settled to a very good 40 strokes a minute, showing very good form. Coming into the second half, blades nicely parallel. City of Cambridge with a lot of work to do. Lisa Silk at stroke, she's got to push the rate. Took a quick look across there. Oh, she's missed a stroke. And Scullers, that'll give Scullers the chance to get well away. They're sitting back, drawing back very nicely. Sue Smith setting a very powerful, long finish.
And Sue Smith and our crew, no problem, I suspect, for them to qualify, but Cambridge must keep pushing. Remember, time of the essence here, and Scullers, good performance from them, well inside Tradesmen's time, and Cambridge, well, just over a length behind.
Very competent showing there from Tideway Scullers.
And absolutely no sign as yet of fatigue from them. Indeed, almost 7 seconds between Tideway Scullers and Putney Town, now hanging on in 6th place. So the last heat of the fours, and furthest away from us in yellow, the Lee, Kingston nearest to us. The favourites to win the new racing boat for their club for the past 2 seasons, but finished 5th on both occasions.
It's the 3rd year that we've done the Daf Sprint. We've got a slightly different crew from last year, but we thought we'd try and make it 3rd time lucky this year.
Here, the lightweights from Hackney in East London.
Lorna Rundle taking the Lee off the start. It's her 3rd year in sprint racing, and although she's very light, she's a great fighter and a very good tactician. The crew picking the boat up very well onto their toes there.
And Kingston, who've just got the lead closest to us, but they're both a little bit slow on the clock, so 3/4 of a second down on Scullers.
It's a very strong Kingston crew. They've got former internationals and national team members in their boat. And certainly they've got the edge, but only just. Lee fighting back. Lorna Rundle taking a quick look across just to see what's happening. But the crew's really neck and neck. What a fantastic fight back from the Lee. Kingston working at 40 strokes a minute. That's 2 more than the Lee. They're trying to get a bit more speed off the finish. Alison Barnett at stroke, forcing that finish, but the Lee will not be dropped. There's about 3 or 4 feet in it, and if anything, the Lee are coming back. Lee have raised their rate, they're pushing for the end there. Lorna Rundle just missed a stroke, that's knocked their rhythm right off, and it's let Kingston get away.
And 1:34.18, the time of Tideway Scullers on the left, and Kingston just outside, and look at that. The Lee so close, even with that mistake. Good race.
Good effort there from Kingston, but I bet you they've got more to come as well.
And the Lee sticking to their task well, but that one mistake could so easily have knocked them out of the row-offs.
I caught a crab about 10 or 15 strokes before the end. The launches are actually coming down by our lane, so it's very washy towards the end.
But to make a good time like that, finishing 3rd fastest, it means you recover pretty quickly.
Well, you don't have time to think. You've got to make sure that your blade gets out clean and that you start again as quickly as possible and try not to lose too much time, which obviously we didn't, so that's good.
So like their men, Tideway Scullers on course for victory here at Walton and heading their local rivals into the row-offs. The first three clear of the others who now look to be fighting for that last remaining place in the final. For now, a moment to relax in the sun as our individual scullers row up to the start. Join us on the stake boats in a couple of minutes. Well, welcome back to Walton-on-Thames. Well, with the sun beating down on the scullers, it was Nottingham's Chris McManus that led the way on water, made bumpier by an ever-increasing volume of river traffic. In the second heat, local man Andy Graham, a semi-finalist in the double sculls at last year's Henley Royal Regatta, took over the #1 spot, slicing over 3 seconds off the clock. A time which also proved too quick for Southampton engineer Edward Prager and his opponent in Heat 4, the University of London's James Stearns. Locked together, it was the Southampton man closest to camera who got to the line first to move into second place. Quarter of a second ahead of Stearns, with Chris McManus now only 4th. The penultimate heat, Chris Spencer from East London over on the far side, Paul Johnson, 25, a scaffolder by trade, closest to us, representing Medway Town from Kent. This is his opponent, 2 years younger, but also with 10 years of rowing experience, a sports instructor from Raynham.
Spencer on the right-hand side, away very quickly. Used to rough water down on the Thames in the East End. Oh, and Johnson having to steer there. He's gone well off course. Just missed it, caught that boy. And Spencer too off course. He's heading towards Johnson's lane. Both scullers not steering very well. And it's Spencer on the far side who's just got away that bit more quickly. He's a powerfully built sculler, Johnson. His sculls are going very deep. He's still off course. This isn't going to help his pace at all.
And both of these men have paid for that bad steering. Now they're well over a second down on Andy Graham's time over the first half.
Spencer on the far side is a nice sculler. He's a nice technical sculler, very clean mover. Whereas Johnson, you can see him catching his sculls all the time. He bullies the boat along. Spencer, smooth and relaxed action there as he sits back on the finish. Taking a quick glance to make sure he's on his lane. And there's Johnson, bullying it and pushing it. Sculls going deep. All a bit tight and tense. And it's Spencer there, just beginning to ease away, just beginning to ease past that nice, long, moving stroke.
But remember, it's only the 6 fastest that go through, and have they picked up some time? Yes, they have. They've picked up more than a second on Andy Graham, and it looked to be Spencer who got there first.
Yes, that was a very good second half from those two. And here you can see Spencer's technical superiority, that smooth, relaxed style that gets him to the line first.
So Chris Spencer and Paul Johnson making up over 2 seconds on Andy Graham in the final 200 metres of their heat, and they now lead with some big gaps opening up at the bottom of the table. So the final heat, Heat 6 in yellow over on the far side, Duncan Nicol, but nearest to us 6'7" Rory Henderson, power sprint champion in 1987, fit and confident.
Oh, good chance, I think. The 500 metres suits me. I raced in Peterluca earlier this year and raced Carpenen, 3 times Olympic champion. Led him to halfway. He overtook me after that, but no, I'm quite good off the start.
Duncan Nicol, 23, rowing for Weybridge, just a mile or so upstream, so he knows the water well, and he's got plenty of local support to help him.
Oh, Duncan Nicol getting away very, very quickly. 44 strokes. Oh, getting caught there. Rather bumpy water. He's got that very distinctive arm catch style there, which could cost him dearly later on in the row. Still rolly water, and he's got a lead, though, on Rory Henderson. But Rory Henderson, with that very effective upright style, nicely coordinated stride that he's setting there. He's a good man to watch, Rory Henderson. Ideal height for sculling. Long arms and legs. Doesn't need to stretch out there quite as much as other scullers. He's got a nice, natural, easy reach and very good explosive movement.
And Andy Graham fastest to this point, but Rory Henderson quicker by over a second.
Rory takes a look across. He's beginning to ease away now, showing his power, but Nicol holding on very well, but you can see he's getting much slower through the water there. Slower there, and that's why it's tiring about that arm catch. And Rory Henderson now moving away all the time. Nice coordination there of the leg drive and the opening of the back.
And Rory Henderson didn't compete in the power sprints last year. He was on Olympic trial duty at Ghent, but he's very determined to get that title back. And look at this, really pulling away. Duncan Nicol having to dig in hard, and Rory Henderson really open up as he comes to the line. And look at that, over 4 seconds quicker than Chris Spencer. And Duncan Nicol, that must have hurt.
Yes, well, Rory Henderson very much out in front in this Walton round. That was a very confident scull from him.
And the Weybridge man getting the nod from his club mates on the bank to let him know that he's also through to the rafts.
It was very good. I really enjoyed it. I broke my stretch up on the start, and then mad panic dashed right down the towpath. I was getting a new one, but that was all okay. It went very well.
Any other problems out there?
Very rough, very rough. I hit all the cruiser wash, so next time I won't.
So the very popular Rory Henderson looking mighty impressive. But it looks like being quite a scrap in the Ross for those 3 remaining places in the final at Peterborough.
The rowing ergometer was developed more than a century ago as a training aid during the winter. Today, the ergo is used by oarsmen and women throughout the year and is regarded by the sport as the ultimate test of physical fitness. Its international popularity has led to the staging of the World Ergometer Championships. And this year in Boston, Massachusetts, Steve Redgrave was one of 850 competitors taking part. Steve fought his way into the final, where he found himself up against fellow Britons Gavin Stewart and Chris Heathcote, and a massive West German, Matthias Sikowski. At 6'10" Sikowski is 7 inches taller than Frank Bruno, and also 2 stone heavier. And he destroyed his opposition over the marathon distance of 2,500 metres. Steve Redgrave tried to stay with him for most of the distance, but blew out with just 200 metres to go, leaving Matthias to power on to a new world record time of 7 minutes, 15.5 seconds. Well, a breathtaking performance in America, but now it's back to sprinting for our own Channel 4 challenge. As usual, we're looking for the 2 men and 2 women who can row the furthest distance in just 60 seconds. And as usual, we start with the women.
Just 3 metres separating these 4 in the earlier heats. Out on the left in blue for the University of London, 22-year-old medical student, the ever-smiling Jane Nielsen. Next to her, Els Vermeulen from Belgium, studying biology at Southampton. The Tideway Scullers, Karine Marwick, all the way from the Orkney Islands, but now studying medicine in London. And on the right, her clubmate in the red and yellow hoops, Jo Goff, 6 foot tall, computer programming, her profession. Jane Nielsen closest to us, first into her stroke, but the 2 clubmates from Tideway Scullers already catching her up. Jane, who's been rowing for just 3 years, but Jo Goff here in the last 3 years has represented Great Britain at Olympic, World and Commonwealth level, and really pulling back there, coordinating well. Els, 277 metres, her best last year, and already she's done 294 in the heats. Coming up to 30 seconds to go, and the 2 Tideway Scullers girls just about 4 or 5 metres ahead. This is Karine Marwick, just perhaps behind her clubmate, but this is where it really hurts, the second half, and Jane there really beginning to struggle now. And Jo Goff putting in everything, and look at the pain on her face as she really tries hard, and she's got just about a metre ahead of her clubmate as they go into the last 10 seconds. Nothing between these 2. It's going to be on the stroke between Karine on the left, Jo on the right. The last stroke, and it's Jo who gets there first. Karine 3:01, a personal best, but Jo Goff wins the ergometer final here at Walton. Her distance, 303 metres.
Jo Goff, well done. This is your first year on the ergo. How are you finding it?
It's a bit of a shock. It's the first time I've done sprint ergo. It's very painful.
Did you do much training for it?
I have to admit, no. We were racing 2,000 metres in Belgium yesterday, and it's just a little bit different from that.
So how do you see yourself getting on at Peterborough?
Well, I'll do a bit more practice next time. I'm going to win it.
So first and second for Tideway Scullers, underlying the fitness of the club's rowers. Els and Jane move across into the wildcard pool, where Els and Ailey Curry from St Andrew are now certain of their places in the national final. Peterborough's Fiona Goff and Jane Nielsen missing out by less than a stroke. So on to the men, and in white for the University of London on the left, the defending champion from Calgary, Norm Rokosh. 348 metres his best last year. Beside him in the red and white hoops of Kingston, the 6'7" figure of New Zealander Shane O'Brien. Third in line, Jim Walker, studying biology at Imperial College. And out on the right, 28-year-old Paul Rees for Rob Roy, who began rowing just 4 years ago. Straight away, the two men on the left, Rockosh and Shane O'Brien, first to the stroke. Here's Rockosh, 15 stone, 6'5", real power and determination. Rees out on the right here for Rob Roy, a couple of inches shorter, half a stone lighter, not quite as good a technician. And here's the big man for New Zealand, Olympic champion in the coxless fours for New Zealand in '84. Really tall, good long levers there, piling on the meters. 30 seconds to go, Jim Walker here, silver medalist in the World Junior Championships just 3 years ago, just finding it a little hard now to stay with the two on the left. They're beginning to edge ahead, but Rockosh, closest to you, struggling a little, and the big New Zealander just one away from us now, beginning to move away as the pain builds up in the muscles. The lactate building up, the muscles burning as we come into the last 10 seconds, and Rockosh is behind Shane O'Brien on the right, and O'Brien already 40 metres better than last year in the heats, and 3.55, he's matched his score from earlier in the day to the metre, and the champion Rockosh is beaten by this man from Auckland.
Shane, well done. How are you feeling?
Pretty naked. Tired, yeah.
How do you psych yourself up for something like this?
I don't really. You just got to get on and do it. You can just go as hard as you can.
So what's in your mind as they're counting you to start?
Oh, I don't really want to do it.
Norm, as defending champion, you have quite a lot to live up to.
That's right, but with fellows like Shane and Steve Redgrave in the competition, it's going to be tough this year.
Is it more tough this year, do you think, than last year? Is it tougher second time round for you?
I think it's a bit tougher. I just feel as though the pressure's on, but hopefully I'll do well in the final. That's all I can hope for.
So the top two now on course for a clash with our own Olympic champion, Stephen Redgrave, who clocked up 367 metres in the opening round at Abingdon. Jim Walker gaining one of the two wildcard places in the final, the other going to Oxford University's Chris Heathcote.
And a great performance there from Shane O'Brien and Norm. Last year, Steve Redgrave and Andy Holmes reached a new pinnacle in their partnership, winning gold in the coxless pairs and bronze in the coxed pairs at the Olympic regatta in Seoul. But now it's all changed for the duet that's enjoyed so much success, as Dan Topolsky reports.
Steve Redgrave and Andy Holmes had been winning top Olympic, World and Commonwealth honours together since the Los Angeles Olympics back in 1984. Theirs was a fairy tale association which culminated in that exceptional gold medal performance out on the Olympic regatta course in Seoul, where they trounced all the opposition in the coxless pairs event. But that was 8 months ago, and after all the celebrating was over, and despite the temptation for further triumphs ahead together, the pair decided to go their separate ways. While Holmes joined a newly formed coxless four, Steve Redgrave found a new partner, which required him to change the side on which he normally rows. Simon Beresford, the man chosen to replace Holmes, is 24 years old and rowed last year in the British coxless four, which came fourth in Seoul. The new combination couples the huge experience of one of the world's greatest athletes with a relative new boy who faces the daunting task of stepping into the shoes of a sporting legend.
I've got to try and be as good as Andy, but I'm different. There's a lot of problems with my technique at the moment, which we're trying to sort out. It's a very hard act to follow, which, you know, there are pressures and different things, but, you know, I've got to keep my head down and get on with it, really, and not worry about it. I've got a different attitude towards it. Like, I want to get on and I want to be world champion. I think my motivation will push Steve on through the year and up to the Olympics. I just hope it sort of helps him for us to win.
But really successful pairs are made in heaven, and Andy Holmes and Steve Redgrave was certainly one of those. Now the question everyone in the rowing world is asking is, can this new partnership recreate that magic?
It's very difficult to compare it to the old pair because it was so outstanding with Andy, and it's a different challenge, and it has had its moments of going very fast indeed. I'm having a few problems swapping over to bow side. It's not quite moving as well as I did on stroke side. but I think in a couple of months' time it's going to be flying.
Well, the summer racing season is getting underway now, and the new pairing has already scored their first success at Duisburg Regatta in West Germany. So things look pretty hopeful for the World Championships in Yugoslavia later in the year.
Welcome back to Walton-on-Thames for the row-offs. Dan, we've got Duncan Nicol and Rory Henderson in the sculls, University of London, Tideway Scullers in the eights. Both those should be very interesting battles.
Oh yes, and Rory I think is going faster than he went last year. He's looking much stronger, much smoother. I think he's going to be unbeatable. And he'll be a great and exciting final, I think, in Peterborough when he comes up against Steve Redgrave. In the eights, Tideway Scullers and UL are having that same battle again as they had last year in the finals. But I think we've got to watch that Cambridge crew, because I think Cambridge are going very fast indeed, and that's going to be quite a tussle here. And of course in the fours, in the women's fours, Kingston, Tideway Scullers are the two crews that are way out in front.
Well, there are 3 row-offs in each category drawn from the 6 fastest boats which qualified in the earlier heats, but only the fastest 4 will qualify for the national final at Peterborough.
First to race, the 2 men who were 5th and 6th fastest in the heats. Closest to us, Andy Graham. Here he is, a couple of seconds quicker than his opponent earlier in the day. 6'1", 11.5 stone. And this is Edward Prager, 3 inches taller and a couple of stone heavier.
Both scullers off very well. Prager catching his right scull there in those first 2 or 3 strokes. He's getting ahead, rolling about in these early strokes. Difficult water. He's staying very high, 44 strokes a minute. He does need to settle down, but he's got a lead at the moment. Graham at 40 strokes a minute. He's looking the stronger, perhaps less finesse, but he's settling better, and he's able to use his power much more effectively. It's close here, but Prager's upright style, you can see that compared to Graham, who's using his legs much more during the power phase of the stroke.
Coming to halfway, and the local man who lives at Walton just got the edge. 40.03 his time from Edward Prager, who does his training on the River Itchen at Southampton.
Prager looks as if he's beginning to tire now into this second half. This is having a bit of a struggle there with that upright style, not using his legs enough, and it's Graham who's digging in hard. Oh, he's caught a buoy there, but he recovered well. He's still up at 38 strokes a minute, but he's looking better and better. Prager on the far side, he's very close to the buoys. Oh, you can see him slowing down with his stroke. And it's Graham pushing away all the time. Prager's just caught a buoy there, and that's really knocked him right out of his stride, and he's given up.
But Graham, not distracted by that, pushes on, and 1:35.50, and that's a good time, a second quicker than he did in the heats. And he'll be pleased with that effort, because he had his own problems earlier on in the race. So the second row off, and just 0.2 of a second separating these two in the heats. Chris Spencer, the quicker man, 6 foot 13.5 stone, and against him Paul Johnson, a couple of years older, an inch taller, and a formidable opponent.
These two swap sides. This is a replay of their earlier heat. The smooth technician versus this man, the head down and go man, Paul Johnson. Johnson got away cleanly, but Spencer leads after the first 10 strokes, and they're stroke for stroke at 40 strokes a minute. Spencer rather close to the buoys there. That could be quite dangerous. Coming back onto his station. Both scullers using their legs well, but you could just see the difference between the smoother, better coordination of Spencer compared to the jerky, tighter movements of Johnson out on the far side.
And Andy Graham still the fastest time to halfway, and this pair about 0.3 of a second slower, and they've got to pick it up now.
Spencer still close to the buoys. He's at 36 strokes a minute, getting good run out of his boat, but Johnson still at 40, trying to get back on terms. Spencer extending his lead, that good drawback at the finish, gets his boat running well off the finish and allows him to recover. And that jerky stroke there from Johnson, it's a bit jabby, a bit short forward.
Spencer maintaining his advantage, and Johnson isn't going to catch him coming up to the line. 35.50 the time of Graham, and Spencer's inside that by half a second, and he takes over the lead, and Johnson also inside the Molesey man's time.
Well, these two swap stations, and it shows the stations are pretty even. Spencer won both of the races, but they're both through to Peterborough, and Spencer a second faster than his earlier race.
It's So now a chance for Duncan Nicol to have another crack at the man closest to us, Rory Henderson. Here he is, 6'7", 14 stone 2, the tallest and heaviest of the scullers racing today. Nicol with 3 seconds to make up, only 6 foot and a couple of stone lighter.
These two also raced each other in the heats on the same stations. Duncan Nicol taking it off there again with that distinctive arm catch style, which means he's taking all the weight of the stroke on his arms, which are the weakest muscles, instead of his legs and back, which are much stronger. That's going to hurt him over the second half, and Henderson's got away a bit faster than he did in the heat. He's sculling with lovely economy there as he gets into his stride. Technically, Henderson really is one of the best scullers in the country. They're both at 38, and Henderson just has the edge as they come up towards the halfway point.
And that's the time of Andy Graham on the left there, 40.03. He's currently in 3rd place, and Henderson here has the lead, but he's down on the clock by just 7 hundredths with half the race to go.
Now Henderson's beginning to move away over the second half. Nicol hanging on. He's beginning to suffer. There again, he's losing the power through the middle of the stroke there. That's what the arm catch does for you. His arms can't really manage anymore, and his steering's going awry as well, while Henderson now is stretching out over the second half, just squeezing away. Lovely to watch.
And a lot of support there for Nicol on the far side, trying to urge him to get back. The Weybridge club mates running along the back, trying to get him back into the competition as Henderson really marches on for the line here. 34.80 the time of Chris Spencer, and Rory's there, but not by much. And Nicol, well, he's going to have to wait and see. He's quite a way back.
Well, another faultless performance there from Henderson. I really do relish his meeting with Redgrave in Peterborough on finals day.
And this time the news from the bankside doesn't look quite so good.
I had a good scull. The first half was good, and then hits and wash and all went from there. Well, you can have one bad stroke and that will just lead to lots of bad things. One of those things.
Always hope to win, of course, but 500-metre racing and a minute and a half, anything can happen at all. As you can see, the launches are going up and down there. It's a bit poppily. You only have to miss a stroke or lose a blade, and that's the end of the race, really.
So the pre-race favourite through to the final, but only 18 hundredths of a second ahead of Chris Spencer. A really excellent effort from the Poplar man, and less than a second between all of the top 4. In the first of the fours rafts, the students from London University on the far side in yellow led the club crew from Cambridge to halfway, but were 4 seconds down on their time in the earlier heats. Faster than the University of London earlier in the day, the Cambridge lightweights now lack the power to close the gap as they moved into the second half. Whilst University of London, on average a stone heavier, maintained the lead despite some untidy blade work. Although first to the line, the Londoners found no extra speed in the last 200 metres. Their time 4 seconds adrift of their previous best. So 1 minute 41.76 the target for the others to beat. And now the two crews who are 3rd and 4th fastest in the heats. Closest to us in blue, the Lee, with young Adam O'Neill up in the bows, coxing the boat. And opposing them, Thames tradesman in yellow. Melanie Holmes at 3, not quite ready. Martha Plessis, the Cambridge blue, at stroke.
Legs, send, sharp.
Adam O'Neill taking the lead well off there, nice and clean. 2 Holmeses in these 2 boats. One here for Thames tradesman Melanie and her sister Rebecca in the Lee crew, both rowing at 3 behind the strokes. And the Lee's settling down to 38 strokes a minute, boat running very well. They're getting good length and power for what really is a very lightweight crew. They're getting a nice rhythm in the boat, and it's given them an immediate lead of about 3/4 of a length.
Together.
Nicely balanced, these two crews, both with an average rate of about 9.5 stone as they come to halfway, and the Lee a couple of seconds up and in the lead.
Thames tradesman, though, looking very composed. Martha Plessis at stroke, very upright style, and a good send and draw back at the end of the stroke. And if anything, they're coming back. The Thames tradesman crew are coming back. And Lee now trying to turn on the power over this second half.
Send it, wash, drive the legs together.
The Lee should be safe, yes, they should be safe. But the Thames tradesman crew coming back all the time. They're pushing this last bit there. It's a good fight back, very good recovery.
And nothing between these two cruisers. Tradesmen really come at the Lee, but Lee are going to get there first, and the time on the left there of University of London, and they've shattered that. Both crews well inside there. Terrific race by both of these women's fours.
Very good performance from Lee, but I think both crews will be going through to Peterborough and the finals.
And a little wave there from Melanie across to her sister Rebecca in the Lee boat. Both pretty happy. So on to the third row off, Tideway Scullers versus Kingston. And Scullers closest to us half a second quicker than their opponents in the heats. But Kingston, with an average weight of 11 stone 3, just the heavier crew.
Alison Barnett at stroke, taking Kingston off at 44 strokes a minute. Very powerful draw back at the finish. She looks very determined there. She's a real tough operator. Maybe Kate Holroyd at 3 should be sitting back a bit more as well. They're up against an experienced crew, but they've just got the edge.
And coming to halfway, and they're quicker by almost a second than the Lee, and it's Kingston who have the lead.
Scullers at 42, but Kingston only at 40, and it's Kingston with the edge on the far side, who are producing the better power and rhythm through the stroke. You can see that hard, long finish from Alison. Good, long, powerful stuff. Tideway Scullers looking perhaps a little bit shorter, but not really holding out the finishes quite as well, cutting the finishes short. And it's Kingston moving away all the time. The boat running very well, real quickness through the stroke. That's what gives them such a good rhythm.
And Kingston here, mighty impressive. Alison Barnett, Kate Holroyd, really pressing home, and this is a terrific performance for them. And I just wonder whether the fatigue is now beginning to show on Tideway Scullers, but take nothing away from Kingston. Look at that, 6 seconds inside the Lee and almost clear water over Scullers.
Scullers probably suffering a little bit because they only just returned to England last night. They'll probably find more pace in the finals, but Kingston absolutely overjoyed.
And delighted with that.
Well, we've got a different crew. I'm the only one who's in the crew from the 2 previous years. I think we've got a stronger crew this year, actually. I think we've got girls who, well, they were in the squad last year and they are very fit still. So hopefully we'll be able to make it this year.
So Kingston in command and looking to make it third time lucky at Peterborough and take home that £4,500 Janasek racing boat for the women's section of their club. So on to the men's eights, the first row off, Walton over on the far side, the host club against Cambridge 99. Here are Cambridge 99, 2 brothers in the crew, the Leightons, David at 7 and Peter at 3. Walton, as I said, the host club, and host clubs not with the greatest record in the history of power sprint.
These two, the slowest qualifiers for the row-offs. Walton on the far side, on their home water. They've got a lot to do in terms of time if they want to get through to Peterborough. And that's Walton off at 48. They're using their power very effectively, strong-looking crew. And on the near side, Cambridge, blades on bow side, going a bit deep, not really staying buried, rolling around badly there, catching water. A bit desperate looking, that. And on the far side, it looks as if Walton have got the early lead.
And coming to our checkpoint, 33.07, that's the time that'll give us a guide for the 2 rows to follow. And there, Brian McMullen at stroke for Walton, pushing on.
The second half turn of the screw, that's what really has to count over the second half. Walton looked to be moving well and moving away with a lot of fluency at 42. Cambridge probably paying for that rather suicidal starting pace. Very hard to maintain when you're rowing that far above yourselves. They're still at 46 and not really putting on the power through the stroke. You can see their oars going too deep, very splashy there. And yes, Walton certainly cleaner, more fluent and moving away all the time.
And their Cox, Caroline Ferreira, now asking the crew for that last effort. Remember, it's all about time, and 1:16.79 is the target for the others to chase, and Cambridge well back there.
That's good for Walton, but will it be fast enough with some very good crews still to come?
So straight on to the second row off, another Cambridge battle, the students of Goldie on the far side against the club men of Rob Roy. Closest to us, just 9/100ths of a second between the two in the heats, Ian Watson at stroke. Goldie, Toby Backhouse, the big man in the centre, but the man with the responsibility on his shoulders, Matthew Britton at stroke.
Yeah, everybody's out to beat Cambridge, which is, I think it's probably a good thing. And this is the first time we tried to go through the summer for a while, and we're going to aim to row all year round as progressing towards winning the boat race, hopefully. So yeah, it's important for us to get hard training in, so I don't mind that sort of needle.
Well, fighting talk from Matt Britton. He's an experienced man, junior world medalist and a senior international, and 3 times a boat race blue. Taking them off hard, 3 long strokes. Now winding it up to 49 strokes a minute. A lot of water flying about. Rather messy blade work, but there's a lot of power too, especially from those men in the boat, middle of the boat. And Rob Roy staying very high as well at 49. They're not settling at all. They're powering along. It's a bit short though and a bit jabby. Cambridge on the far side, settling to 43, and they're sealing a slight lead there as they come up to the halfway point.
So 240 metres completed, and Goldie just perhaps in front by 1/4 of a second on the clock.
Well, now let's see how well Cambridge can really put together that big power and weight advantage that they have over the second half. Rob Roy rather paying for that scampering high rate. They're still at 48. Very hard to use their weight properly and to be effective. But just look at Cambridge now, squeezing by with those big, powerful strokes. Stretching out now well, still a lot of water flying about, but you can really feel the power in that boat as they lean back on the finishes.
And Lee Weiss asking them to go, and go they do to the line in the fastest time. And Goldie there by more than a second take the lead, well ahead of Rob Roy.
And what a good display of power rowing there from the light blues.
Cambridge University then in the lead. Rob Roy second, with Walton, the host, now in 3rd place. So on to the final row-off, Tideway Scullers versus the University of London. Scullers closest to us in blue, the lighter crew, and stroked by John Beattie himself, an Olympic and world bronze medalist. University of London on the far side in yellow, all over 6 foot, with an average weight of 13 3/4 stone.
Ooh, UL got a flyer there. They really got away quickly. They've gone off at 50 strokes a minute. They reversed the stations. It's now really important to see whether they can harness their power more effectively than they did in their first race. Scullers on the near side here, not quite so tight. Blades going a bit deep, especially there from 3. Getting badly caught up there, Paul Wright. Both now settling at 44. And UL really got advantage there. They're about 1/3 of a length up.
And Goldie's time there on the left, and UL are quicker by half a second.
UL blades very well together now, showing great form, great turn of speed there. Developing the power through the stroke very effectively. Terrific control power. Best rowing we've seen today here. Very quick on the pickup. A real credit to their coach there, Marty Aitken. Tideway Scullers, all those experienced internationals, a bit short of practice perhaps, and they're losing ground all the time. It's nearly a length now. It's UL stroke man Johnny Hulls driving for home. Very cool customer.
I remember it was Scullers who beat UL in the heat, but they've turned the tables here in decisive fashion and won 13.09, and they've annihilated Goldie's time, and they've got clear water over the rivals. They'll be very satisfied with that.
Fine display that, and real revenge for their earlier defeat by Scullers.
And John Beattie and his crew a length back, well, perhaps a little disappointed with that.
We're very, very pleased to have got through, because that was our aim for today. We're a new crew, as I explained earlier, and we came here with the aim of qualifying and then working over the next period until the race, so that in Peterborough we can give a good performance. Having said that, having raced UL in the semi-final and beaten them, we really fancied our chances. And unfortunately, well, they jumped us on the start. We got off a little bit slowly, and they obviously went off a bit quicker, with us having done that to them last time. And we never really got into it.
Yeah, well, we haven't been out in the 8 too many times before this, and it just seemed to click just on that last row there. And the start came off really well, and we settled down into a very nice rhythm. It just, everything seemed to go right for us.
Was there an extra edge for this crew in that particular race then?
Yeah, I think we were all gunning to get them because, you know, they beat us last year. Yeah, I think we sort of pushed extra hard because of them.
So the champions of 87 back on top. The only 8 to break 1:14 today, but Goldie improving with every race. The first 4 all on their way to Peterborough and the final.
So, with all the individual honours now decided, the Leyland Daft Merit Award for the best overall club performance of the day goes to Tideway Scullers, second in the 4s and third in the 8s. John Beattie collecting the salver and a cheque for £400 for the club. So to find out who will become the 1989 Power Sprint champions and take home the racing boats and blades, join us for the national finals in Peterborough next week. But right now, from all of us in sunny Walton-on-Thames, goodbye.
You're watching Channel 4, sculling along to Peterborough for the finals of the 1989 Power Sprint Championships.
Welcome to the finals of the Leyland Daft Power Sprint Championship. Our hosts for the second year in succession are Peterborough City Rowing Club, on whose splendid purpose-built regatta course we'll discover this year's sprint champions and the clubs who will take away the most valuable prizes in British rowing.
It's the sort of thing that a club dreams about, having a new sculling boat to shove kids out in, so that's what we're hoping for anyway.
The prizes were obviously a very great attraction because as a women's boat club we don't actually possess any fours. It would be very useful if we could lay our hands on the four somehow.
And the women are the second best squad in Marlow Rowing Club at the moment, and they don't possess a boat. So for them to do well, and if I can pick up a major prize as well, it'd be really something special for the club.
It is a very attractive prize. Obviously, from my point of view, an extra boat means another £8,000 free to spend on something else. And for anybody, despite the fact we have good sponsorship, that's a good thing.
All of the women's crews row in men's boats, boats which were purchased for men and rowed in by men, and with men's blades, which are the inboards far too much. So to win either of the prizes would be fantastic.
It's also the day on which we'll be putting our oarsmen and women to the test in the final round of Channel 4's own challenge on the dreaded ergometer. Well, Dan Topolsky has been with me throughout the qualifying rounds. Dan, what do you make of the course and conditions today? Because up to now, of course, we've always been on a river.
That's right. We've got still water here, and we're racing over exactly 500 metres and three-lane racing. But there's quite a headwind coming down against the crews, which could cause them a little bit of trouble. But as long as it doesn't rise and fall through the day, then at least it'll be fair for everybody.
You've seen all the rowers. Who do you think is going to make it today?
Well, I think Steve in the single has got to be the guy, but Rory Henderson goes very, very quickly over the first part of a race, so he might give him a worry. In the women's fours, it may be Kingston's chance this time. They've lost out for the last 2 years, but it may be them this time round. And I think in the eights, University of London should be out in front, but Hampton School are going very well for a school crew.
It would certainly be a turn-up if Hampton did the business. We'll look out for your predictions later. Thank you. Well, while Dan goes over to the commentary box, let me take you through the first stage of our special format for the finals. For the opening heats, the crews in each of our categories have been drawn into groups of 3, all of them racing not against each other, but against the clock. The 6 fastest will then be seeded into 2 semi-finals. The 8s are first onto the water, with Dan is your commentator, David Goldstrom.
With today's crews drawn according to their finishing positions in the qualifying rounds, defending champions Tideway Scullers from Chiswick in London opened Heat 1 in determined fashion. John Beattie and his crew over 4 seconds quicker than Upper Thames from Henley, runners-up to Hampton School in the opening round of the championship at Abingdon. Scullers clear approaching the line and in no mood to give up their title easily. Heat 2, Marlow closest to us in blue, Agecroft in the middle in the yellow bibs, Walton the wildcard qualifiers being one of the 3 crews from across the country who missed the cut by the smallest margin. This is Agecroft from Salford in Manchester, qualified 2nd fastest in round 2 at York, Stephen Goodwin at stroke. And Marlow, runners-up at Abingdon, the 2 Olympians, Mark Buckingham and Jonathan Spencer-Jones at stroke and 7.
Set, go! It's the Walton stroke, Brian McMullen taking them off, winding them up to 47 strokes a minute. If you're wondering where the Cox is, he's lying in the bows of the boat. All crews off nice and cleanly. Closest to us are Marlow, stroked by Mark Buckingham, who was 4th in the Coxless 4 in the Olympics last year, setting into a good solid rhythm at 44. All the crews here using plastic blades and rowing in plastic boats. And it looks as if on the far side the battle is between Walton and this crew Agecroft, stroked by Steve Goodwin, 23 years old. Sitting at 6, 2 behind him is Eric Caldwell, 42 years old.
Coming up to halfway, and so on the far side it's Walton who got the lead from Agecroft in the centre, 45.52. Now that's slower by more than 3 seconds. Marlow, the crew nearest to us, just behind.
Good mixture here of youth and experience in this boat. Very effective boat. Here in Marlow, trying to get back on terms with the other 2 crews. Blades going rather deep there on the bow side. It looks as if Walton in the red bibs there, into a very strong rhythm at 41, are easing away. Yes, they're easing away. Big, powerful crew with a good rhythm.
And coming into the final 50 metres, it's Walton who are going to get there first, but the time of Tideway Scullers on the left there, and they're not going to beat that. It's Walton from Agecroft in the centre. Marlow closing nearest to us, but Walton get there first, and Agecroft second by just a couple of feet.
Well, good mature rowing from Walton, but I wonder if their time will be fast enough to get them through.
Agecroft, Eric Caldwell there at 6, blowing hard, just showing how tough it is rowing into this wind. Well, 3 heats to come, but Scullers already with an impressive lead, less than a second between the next 4. Well, lacking the same drive that defeated Oxford University's ISIS crew in round 1, the schoolboys were now fighting for survival. Whilst in the same heat, Goldie, the full Cambridge boat race crew, were managing the windy conditions much the better, finishing in 1:30.7 to go 3rd behind Scullers and Walton. In heat 4, Hollingworth Lake from Rochdale, drawn in the centre, went off course right from the start. Despite the umpire's warnings and the efforts of their Cox to correct his steering, the boat continued to veer into their opponent's water. With their blades interlocked with the black oars of Rob Roy from Cambridge, both crews were losing precious seconds and the chance of qualifying for the semi-finals. Rob Roy suffering the interference, but getting to the line first in a time less than a second slower than Goldie. Dominating the final heat, the University of London, Power Sprint champions in 1987, became only the 2nd crew to break 1:30. So at the end of the heats, the defending champions were still at the head of affairs, with Agecroft in 6th place, the lone survivors from the north. But with Rob Roy granted a re-row for the interference they encountered earlier, the prospect of a 3rd and extra semi-final for the 8s turned into reality when Nigel Garrett stroked the crew home more than 3 seconds quicker than the Lancashire crew. Good enough to make the cut. But what of Hampton School, who early in the championship had looked capable of going all the way?
We've been doing a lot of hard training for national schools, which is actually next weekend. So we're just starting a period of light training up to that, so we'll be at our peak potential for Nat schools. Whereas at the moment out there, we're really tired, because all through this week we've been doing very long pieces and very intensive work.
So the first heat of the women's 4s on stake boats, Peterborough on the far side, Durham in the centre, Maidenhead closest to us. 4th fastest in qualifying at Abingdon with Helen Smith at stroke, Alison Hope behind her at 3, the stern pair. Durham, who did well to qualify in 2nd place at York, Claire Campbell there at stroke with hand on head. And Peterborough, Jane Armstrong and her crew in the finals thanks to a wildcard place.
Attention, set, go! Durham in the middle there, getting off the fastest. Coxswains all having difficulty getting straight in these headwind conditions. They're winding themselves up there to about 47 strokes a minute. And all 3 crews off nice and cleanly. But it's Peterborough getting into their rhythm first. They're settling to 39 strokes a minute. It's Maidenhead, rating rather low there at 36 strokes a minute. You have to try and keep it lively and sharp into the headwind. And Durham in the middle at 35, even lower. And it's Peterborough on the far side who are keeping it lively at 38 and moving up all the time.
And the Metcalf sisters, Caroline in the bow and Barbara in front of her at 2 for Durham as the three crews approach halfway. 57.55 is the time set up by Peterborough, who now lead from Durham in the centre. Closest to us, Maidenhead just closing on the northern crew.
Out in that blue lane, it's pretty hard there. The water's the bounces there, but Maidenhead still a bit low, but trying to get back on terms. Peterborough extending their lead. Their technique's not great. Stroke there, Jane Armstrong leaning away at the finish of the stroke, but they're driving it along very hard, and they've moved out to nearly a length now. They're keeping it lively into the headwind, and that has to pay dividends. The headwind slowing all the crews down, making it very, very heavy work over the second half.
But they've got to keep pushing on. Remember, only the 6 fastest are going to go through to the semi-finals, and Peterborough now really getting the support of their home crowd, and they're going to get to the line first. Durham in the centre, just ahead of Maidenhead, and Peterborough there just over 2 minutes, and Durham by a couple of feet ahead of Maidenhead closest to us.
Well, honour satisfied for Peterborough, performing very well in front of their home crowd.
In heat number 2, the EastEnders from the Lee, runners-up a year ago, with Lorna Rundle once again at stroke dictating their race plan, sliced more than 5 seconds off Peterborough's time. Only to see an aggressive Kingston, winners of round 3 at Walton, go 3 seconds quicker in the very next race. Geography student Alison Barnett at stroke. Tradesman's lightweight 4, averaging 9.5 stone, confirmed the promise they showed in finishing 4th at Walton, with the second fastest time and clear water over Scottish rivals Clydesdale, winners of round 2 at York, and here in the centre, moving ahead of the Oxford University students, Osiris. Whilst the talented scullers quartet of Karine Marwick in the bow, Kate Miller at 2, Jo Goff at 3 and Sue Smith at stroke could only manage the 3rd fastest time behind Tradesman, 1 lane away, Maggie Jameson and her Birmingham crew in the top 3 for the past 2 seasons are fighting hard into the wind for their place in the semi-finals. Their effort ultimately good enough for 5th place. These then, the 6 crews still in with a chance of winning the Janusek racing boat for their club, but Kingston now firm favourites.
Yes, we were quite pleased. We wanted to have a steady row and a steady one to begin with and just sort of hold back because we knew we'd beat Sheffield, so we just wanted to have a good one, and obviously it was a fast time, which makes it even better.
Yes, we are very happy. There's a very strong wind out there. We're finding it quite difficult, especially in the furthest lane. But we were very pleased with our row. It was very strong, very confident row.
Very pleased. It was a good, tough little race there, and we did basically what we wanted to do, which is just go flat out from start to finish and keep it neat as possible in this kind of unpredictable winds here.
Well, with the winds stiffening, conditions now look likely to favour the heavier men in the single sculls. In the opening heat, although Birmingham's Mike Horrocks on the far side and Gloucester's Chris Walmsley led the slow-starting Paul Johnson to halfway, neither could resist the second-half power of the 25-year-old scaffolder from Medway Town, who clearly relished the conditions. In the next heat, Nottingham's Simon Larkin, the national 2,000-metre champion and conqueror earlier this year of Stephen Redgrave in the 4-mile head of the river race, struggled for pace over this shorter distance, finishing half a second behind the Weybridge man, Duncan Nicol. The pair of them over 3 seconds slower than Paul Johnson. Out on his own in Heat 3, Steve Redgrave pushed all the way, knowing that to relax could easily cost him a semi-final place. Indeed, his lead on the line of 11 hundredths over Paul Johnson was short-lived, for in the penultimate heat, both Southampton's Edward Prager and Scotland's Ian Law in the centre were both well ahead on the clock. Ian Law, championship runner-up last year, winner of round 2 at York, the first sculler to break 1:50. The final heats, New Zealander Arnie Lafleur closest to us, Rory Henderson in the centre, and on the far side, David Coverdale. 5th at York behind Ian Law, and delighted to get a wild card into the final. Closest to us, Arnie Lafleur, 3rd fastest at York, a semi-finalist a year ago at Henley in the Diamond Sculls. And between these two, Rory Henderson, convincing winner of round 3 at Walton, and determined to get back the title he won in '87.
Rory Henderson, always a nice sculler to watch, taking off there. He's a very tall man, so he gets good natural length. Nicely coordinated arms, legs and back movement. He's off at 42 strokes a minute, settling down to 40. Arnie Lafleur closest to us, the New Zealander. He's staying at 42. He's also a very upright sculler. He's a big, powerful man. If you just see his left scull, it's going very deep, and that's going to slow him down quite a bit. And that's inexperience. Or he's perhaps not properly rigged, gripping his sculls a bit. David Coverdale on the far side. He's at 36. He's got the lowest rating. He's got more body reach forward than the other two, and he's also less powerful. but he's holding his own very nicely to halfway.
So just about 20 metres to the halfway check time. And remember, only the 6 fastest will go through, and that's the time of Ian Law on the left, and this trio are slower by almost a second, and it's Arnie Lafleur who has the lead from Rory Henderson in yellow, with David Coverdale now dropping away.
Rory and Arnie both at 38. Henderson trying to sit back into the wind there. Arnie just losing his finishes a bit, but he's pushing very, very hard. He's not letting Henderson get away. It's a great battle between these two. Henderson looking under a bit of pressure now. He's technically the better sculler, but that New Zealander, all that New Zealander beef piling on the power, and he's getting away. Henderson losing pace, he's down to 34. All really struggling now, and Lafleur pushing on at 38. Very gutsy from the New Zealander.
And well into the final 100 metres now, and these the danger moments for Rory Henderson. He's going to have to work all the way to the line. Remember, it's about time. 1 minute 49.55 for Ian Law, and they're both past that now as Lafleur gets there first, and he's over 3 seconds down, and Rory Henderson even further back.
Well, Lafleur's sculling is improving all the time. That was a very good showing from him.
Well, these then the 6 fastest, but perhaps not exactly in the order we might have expected. Redgrave and Henderson, 4th and 5th behind Ian Law in the changing conditions.
It's quite hard with the wind. You've really just got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing against the wind. It feels quite heavy when you're trying to drive through it, but it was quite good the way it went anyway.
Very hard. It was a very stiff headwind, and I set off to do 2 lots of 30 strokes, but I found I had another 20 to do on the end of it.
Didn't go very well for me at all. I'm very light, so I'm giving the two other guys in my heat about 3 stone. And into that headwind, you just got less momentum after the finish of the stroke. So I'm getting stopped by the wind and they just keep running into it, so I'm knackered.
Well, the semi-finals, the next hurdle for our oarsmen and women, but first, the final of the ergometer challenge. Back with that in a couple of minutes.
Hello again. Time for the last 60 seconds of pain for the finalists in this year's Channel 4 Ergometer Challenge. For more than 100 competitors who started out from all around the country, we're down to the final 4. The man and woman who can achieve the furthest distance will take back home for their fellow club members the very latest concept ergometer worth around £600.
On the machines first, our women finalists. From left to right in the red and yellow hoops of Tideway Scullers, 25-year-old computer programmer Joe Goff, a personal best of 303 metres in winning round 3 at Walton. Wearing glasses, the defending champion, 21-year-old Gwyn Batten, who went 3 strokes further in York to set a new championship record of 312 metres. Also for Scullers, medical student and British international oarswoman Karine Marwick, the finalist for the 2nd year in succession. And in blue, Trent Polytechnic student Sarah Studholm, yet to break the 300 barrier, but 11 metres up on her best last year. And a pretty even break by all 4 competitors here. Joe Goff, who began rowing at Oxford 7 years ago and finished 6th in Britain's Olympic 4 at Seoul last year. Sarah, well, she discovered rowing just 4 years ago. Joe, the tallest of the quartet at 6 foot, and really trying to use that extra leverage. Coming to halfway and still only a couple of strokes between all 4. Gwyn, only 21, studying for a sports degree at Leeds. Look at that power, really stocky build. Karen, the Orkney Islander, who learned to row at Cambridge 9 years ago, 3:05 metres her personal best. Joe just beginning to slow here as Gwyn keeps the momentum going, just 1 away from us. Coming towards the last 15 seconds now, and it's Gwyn who's got a lead from Joe, but Karine's just behind her. And it looks to be between these two, and they're now stroke for stroke as they come in the last couple of seconds. And it's going to be on the last stroke, and it's Gwyn Batten who gets there first. Karine equaling her personal best, but the champion there in awesome form, defending her title.
Gwyn, congratulations, a successful defence of your title. Does it get harder second time round?
Yeah, it was much harder this time. Yeah, it was, it's okay till you get to the first 30 seconds, and then from there on it's horrible. Really hurts.
Now, last year you won for a different club. How will Leeds feel about taking home an ergometer with you tonight?
I hope they'll be very pleased. I'm not sure, but we'll have to see.
You've obviously been doing a lot of training. You're improving your times virtually all the time. A lot better than last year's final.
Yeah, I've done less training this year, but I think I've done more time on the water, which may have helped.
So the champion retains her unbeaten record for a second year, with Karine Marwick just over a stroke back, the better of the two tideway scullers on the day. Well, now it's the men. Wearing white on the left, computer technician Paul Rees for Rob Roy. 6'3", 14.5 stone. A couple of inches taller and a stone heavier, Marlowe's Stephen Redgrave. 367 metres, the championship record he set in round 1 at Abingdon. Next, 20-year-old biology undergraduate Jim Walker. At 6'5", the same height as Steve, but 2 stone lighter. And completing the lineup in Kingston's red and white hoops, New Zealand Olympic gold medalist Shane O'Brien, the tallest at 6'7", the heaviest at 16 stone. Jim and Shane on the right, the first to react in these early seconds. Nothing between the four of them. Paul Rees, the least experienced, but nicely coordinated, perhaps lacking a little power, and also the height of this man, Shane O'Brien, really using those long levers, pulling back to burn up the meters. Steve Redgrave, one away from us. Look at those legs, really compressed, really driving with those strong thigh muscles. And he's got the lead coming into the last half, about 5 metres up on Shane, and Jim between the two, about 4 metres back. But Redgrave, the best of the four in coordination. The arms, back and legs all together. Jim lighter by a couple of stone, but doing really well here, only 4 metres behind Shane. Paul, closest to us now, beginning to struggle as Steve really powers on. Coming into the last 10 seconds, and Steve's got about 15 metres up on Shane, and Jim still sticking close there in third place. But Redgrave really determined there, and look at that, 370 metres, a new championship record, as well as the title of odometer champion. A really amazing performance by this man. He really does go on and on.
Steve, congratulations. How are you feeling? And is there extra pressure on you to do well when everybody expects you to win?
I think so, yes. There's so many different events here that to what I'm used to are totally different. But I quite like the ergos and the sprint. I think I'm quite suited to sprinting racing. And it's really good fun. It's good having the crowd behind you as well.
So Marlow Rowing Club received the new Concept 2 ergometer, but for Steve, the job was only half done. The semi-finals, the next hurdle, with only the first boat across the line in each race and the fastest loser to qualify for the championship final. Briefly headed in the opening semi-final by Southampton's Edward Prager in the centre, Steve Redgrave's powerful rhythm put him in command by halfway. The Commonwealth gold medalist in Edinburgh 3 years ago, retaining his enthusiasm for this individual discipline. For the Southampton engineer who began sculling just 4 years ago and qualified in a faster time than Steve, this face-to-face meeting was proving a lot tougher. Coming into the final 100 metres, Steve was clear, with Medway Town's Paul Johnson on the far side, now overhauling Edward Prager in his customary second-half charge, looking for that fastest loser spot. But 5 strokes out, Steve was cruising to the line, saving his energy for the final, allowing Paul Johnson to close within half a length. At the line, Steve safely through to the final, and Paul Johnson hoping to be that fastest loser. So on to the second semi-final, England on the far side, Scotland in the centre, and closest to us, New Zealander Arnie Lafleur, 6'3½", 13 stone, and he looked very good, beating Rory Henderson by over half a second in the same heat. Ian Law, 1.5 inches shorter and a couple of pounds lighter than Arnie, but the fastest qualifier, and Rory, 6'7", 14 stone 2, and he needs to really use those long levers. Remember, only the first man to cross the line sure of a place in the final.
Rory was a bit disappointing in his opening heat against Lafleur, and he needs really to win this semi-final to be sure. Good clean takeoff there from him at 48 strokes a minute. And Arnie Lafleur closest to us at 44. He's out there in the blue lane again. It's a bit less fluent than Henderson, getting his sculls caught a little bit in the rough water there. You can see him catching, throwing up a bit of water. Very upright style though, but he's extremely powerful. He gets good run out of his boat. Last year's runner-up there in the middle, Ian Law. He's looking quite relaxed, looking round a lot. 36 strokes a minute, more traditional body swing. He's a nice sculler.
But perhaps lacking a little bit of power, and he mustn't let the other two get too far away. On coming to 250 metres to go, and this a much faster heat. Rory on the far side, Arnie Lafleur closest to us, and they're 2 seconds up on the pace.
Lafleur's at 40 strokes a minute. Still a lot of water flying up from his sculls. But on the far side is Rory Henderson beginning to extend the lead there. He's looking very comfortable, sitting back nicely at the finish. Very nice sculler. He's checking that he's on line. Ooh, a little bit of a tip to one side there. He's got the crowd behind him. He's moving well away. He's well clear now. He's down to 32, and he's got it in hand. He just has to win this now.
And that's not going to be a problem for Rory Henderson, but the battle on for second between Arnie Lafleur nearest you and Ian Law, and it's Lafleur who's going to get there first, and Ian Law very disappointing in third.
Henderson, like Redgrave, was able to relax over the last 100 yards. That final should be a real scorcher then. Arnie Lafleur hoping to be the fastest loser.
The semi-final was about winning because you were guaranteed a place in the final. The first heat was very difficult to judge because you had to be in the fastest 6 times, which meant you could win your heat and still not make it. So an easier race, but a different approach, really.
It seems like the wind's dropped a bit, but it's still very, very rough off the start. But I was a little bit more relaxed with that one. I got an early lead, and I was able just to sort of take it down and just finish in first place to qualify for the final. So I was quite pleased with that.
So a duel to relish in the final. Henderson wanting his title back, Redgrave looking to add the sculls to his ogometer victory, and Lafleur, the fastest loser, hoping to surprise the pair of them. Well, on to the women's fours, 3 lightweight crews with an average weight of 9.5 stone. And nearest to us in blue, the Lee with 13-year-old Adam O'Neill coxing the boat lying down in the bows. Sally-Ann Petrie there at 2 for Thames Tradesman, not quite ready. Clydesdale on the far side, Lindsay McPhee and Katrina McCallum at bow and 2 with their hands up there.
Legs, legs, sharp, sharp.
You can see how rough the water is there as Adam O'Neill takes the crew off. Blades flying around a bit in the lead crew. Settling now, 41, and they've just got the edge there as they get into those first 15 strokes. Clydesdale with Annalise Rennie at stroke, setting the crew early into a good strong stride at 38. Good sit back there at the finish. Lee in the blue lane again, out in the worst of the water there. Lorna settling them at 40. Blades not quite so well together, but they do have the edge.
Come on, Janice.
It's Adam O'Neill calling the crew up, and in the Thames Tradesman crew, Martha Plessis. Their crew going along at 40 strokes a minute. Melanie Holmes at 3 up against her sister Rebecca, who's rowing number 3 for the Lee. And it's the Lee who've got a good quarter of a length.
So into the final 250 metres. Remember, it's the first crew that crosses the line that goes into the final. So it's the Lee closest to us. Tradesman and Clydesdale now an awful long way back.
All that hard winter training paying off now for the Lee, pushing hard over the second half. 2 going rather deep there on the far side. And it's these 2 London-based crews battling it out. Both crews with well-experienced girls in the boats. Clydesdale falling back on that far side, still with a lot to do, but it's Thames Tradesman beginning to fight back. Thames Tradesman coming back all the time.
And the Lee have always been in front. Lorraine Kay there in the bow, just look to her right. But here's Tradesman, and they're really putting their effort in. And there goes Melanie Holmes asking her stroke Martha Plessis for the last final effort. The last few strokes to the line. Remember, only the first crew across the line gets into the final. And the Lee closest to us, perhaps with their bow just still in front of Tradesman, who are really charging now. The Lee closest to us. Tradesman on the far side, and who gets there first? You couldn't separate those 2 crews at all. They both flashed through together, and Clydesdale well out of it in 3rd place. Tremendous performance.
Wonderful, wonderful fight back there from Thames Tradesman, but still at this point, neither crew knowing who actually got the verdict.
And the Lee there really fought hard, but Dan, this one too close to call.
Well, it was the Lee holding them off all the way, but losing pace over these last few strokes. And Tradesman, the higher rating crew, all through the race, pushing, and just edging back as they come up to the line. Really impossible to separate them, and I still can't separate them.
Looks like a dead heat on the very last stroke, and indeed that's the judge's verdict. So it now depends on the times the 2 crews achieved in the heats. And Tradesman were the faster, so the Lee now have to hope to be the fastest loser.
That was very tight, right to the line.
Are you aware when you're on the water just how tight it is?
Yeah, you can feel them right there, but really you're very much concentrating your own boat, and not quite sure if they're seat up or seat down or what, so just keep going.
So the second semi-final, Tideway Scullers and Kingston, the heavier crews. Birmingham on average 18 pounds lighter. This is Birmingham, the runners-up 2 years ago, third in last year's final. Tideway Scullers, winners of the boat 2 years ago. Sue Smith at stroke, declining the dark glasses. Between these two, Kingston, fastest in the heats, and again intent on proving who's number one to their Thames-based rivals.
Two of the Scullers four were in the Olympic four last year, and two of the girls in my four, Fiona Phelps and me, were in the Olympic eight. The Olympic four got selected, and the Olympic eight didn't get selected. There was a lot of hoo-ha about the Olympic eight not actually getting selected. So actually beating Scullers, I think, especially for us two, we thought, great, we've beaten two of the girls who went to the Olympics, and it's a bit of a, we should have gone as well, and we're just having our say now.
Well, she's a very determined girl, Alison Barnett, determined to have her say. She's taking Kingston off now at 46. Still see how rough it is. Birmingham on the far side. They're taking it off at 46 as well, and it's Maggie Jameson at stroke, setting the crew to 42 in that lovely, good, fluent rhythm that they have. Remember, they were third last year. Tideway Scullers closest to us, Sue Smith and Joe Goff, Olympians, placed 6th last year at Seoul, and they're at 40. Two missing water at the catch-a-lot. Remember, Joe Goff and the Baukari Marwick did the ergo competition this morning, and they are certainly feeling the effects. They're well down now as they approach the halfway point. Alison Barnett, quick look to either side. Terrific strong finish there. And they've got a good lead.
This, a much quicker heat, despite the headwind. They're well ahead of the Lee, who were fastest to this point in the first semi-final. In fact, 5 seconds quicker. And Kingston now in command from Birmingham. And Tideway Scullers with an enormous amount to do.
Tideway Scullers struggling now to get back into the fight. Sue Smith at stroke, very experienced girl, but it's Alison Barnett who's really got this Kingston crew moving so well. Kate Holroyd, almost a grin on her face there. She sits back behind her stroke. And Birmingham on the far side, fighting all the way. They've got the edge on Tideway Scullers. Tideway Scullers cannot get back at it. But it's Kingston, majestic now. Down to 36, they know they've got this race in hand. Birmingham still at 40, losing cohesion a lot here.
But Maggie not letting them relax, really digging in now. She knows that if she can't beat Kingston, she'll go for that fastest loser spot in this semi-final. And this race much quicker than the first one. And Kingston get there first, Birmingham second, and Tideway Scullers just can't get back. Terrific performance from the Kingston quartet.
Ooh, Alison Barnett really rubbing it in. Her crew absolutely delighted.
And Tideway Scullers there, something of a surprise, but Audrey Wedderburn in the bow, she's had the news from the bank, and they've made it through to the final.
Well, that race, there was an awful lot of aggression, especially off the start. I think that was the best start we've ever had. But I caught a crab halfway down and just about stopped the boat, so I thought we'd lost it then. I was amazed to find out that we'd gone through.
The top three safely through to the final, but spare a thought for the lead. Well, in the eights, the path to the final was slightly different. The four fastest crews from the heats drawn head-to-head in the second and third semi-finals, with only the winners to qualify directly. The second-place crews hoping for the fastest loser spot. The target also for these three crews in the first semi-final. Approaching halfway, there was little to choose between Rob Roy in red and Upper Thames in the centre. But coming into the last 150 metres, it was the Cambridge crew, rowing for the third time in the afternoon, whose longer and more effective stroke gained the vital advantage. And with it, a chance of a place in the final. 1:26.74, their best time of the day. So to the second semi-final, Goldie versus the University of London. Remember, only the winner goes directly into the final. The loser will be hoping to be quicker than Rob Roy. Jonathan Hulls talking to his cox Joanna Russ, and Nick Justice taking the Cambridge crew away, facing his cox Lee Weiss.
Two of the top crews in the country here. Boat race crew from Cambridge have changed their stroke. Nick Justice has replaced Matt Britton, who's moved back to 6. Cambridge off at 48, and UL at 46, who are closest to us. Very strong, powerful crews here, and UL have the early advantage. Johnny Hulls at stroke. And they have about a canvas. And it's Cambridge settling into the lower rhythm. They're at 42, looking very well together and very threatening. Legs going down nice and hard and fast. It's a good sit back there as they lean into the wind.
Can Goldie get back on terms? University of London in the lead, and this a much quicker semi-final, 2 seconds quicker than Rob Roy.
University of London at 43 strokes a minute. You see good, solid, horizontal drive there. It's the second year running this crew has been together, and they're showing it with good, fine rowing, good, clean blade work, and a drive there at the finish. Cambridge, their blade work not so good, and rather slow into the water, with a lot of water flying about at the finish of the stroke.
But not a lot between these two crews, and that's going to be important. University of London, 1 stroke there to the line first, and Cambridge really not too far behind, within a second.
Well, University of London in terrific form there. They go through.
Goldie in the fastest loser spot, but remember, the last semi-final yet to come. And on the stake boats, Tideway Scullers and Walton. Walton, who've done really well to get this far. Remember, they got through with a wild card place, and now a chance of that boat in the final. Scullers, the defending champions.
The Scullers have Olympic silver medalist Malcolm McGowan, who missed the heats. He's back in the crew at number 7 behind John Beattie. John Beattie himself was an Olympic world bronze medalist. And at 6, the gold medalist Clive Roberts, a lightweight gold medalist. Very experienced men in this Tideway Scullers crew. They're off at 47 strokes a minute. Walton nearest to us, not intimidated, at least in these early strokes here, settling to 44. And it's just a few feet in it, with Scullers on the far side, maybe just have the edge. Walton Cox lying in the bows of the boat there, but this is Scullers settling into that powerful, powerful rhythm. Both crews at 40 strokes a minute now.
And this will be all important, and look at this, 1700ths quicker than the University of London, and that's got to be good news for Walton. If they can hang on, they might just get into the final, or even overtake Scullers.
There's Walton really trying to get back on terms. They know it's against the clock. They've got to get back up as close as they can to this Scullers crew. But it's Scullers with a quarter of a length, striding out, lengthening out. They know they have to just win this race, and they go through. Tremendous power through the middle of the stroke. Well in command.
Scullers half a length up, but Walton not too far behind. The seconds ticking away, and they're outside the time of UL. But how close are Walton as Scullers definitely qualify for the final?
Well, the Scullers go through and join UL for the final.
Walton, they don't know the news yet, but in fact they've been denied by less than a second. Goldie taking the place as the fastest loser, and so the clash of the big three is on. Well, whilst our finalists prepare a chance for the power sprint public to see potentially the fastest 8 afloat. The sculling 8 demanding perfect synchronisation of all 16 sculls. Nottingham County Rowing Association's world-class squad preparing to attempt age-cross 4-year-old record of 2 hours 34 minutes for the 26-mile Loch Ness Marathon.
Welcome back to Peterborough. While our finalists are completing their warm-up, a chance for us to take a brief look at the world's most famous and best-loved rowing event, which this year, like the Grand National, celebrates its 150th anniversary. The event, of course, is Henley Royal Regatta. Dan, a former winner at Henley, now describes the magic of this thriving British sporting and social occasion.
To the public, Henley Royal Regatta is often seen as little more than an Edwardian garden party. But that belies the true quality of the event that began with a single day's racing in 1839, when the good citizens of the town saw an opportunity to profit from a host of informal rowing challenges, including the very first university boat race between Oxford and Cambridge. Today it's a 5-day extravaganza with a turnover of more than £1 million, but why is it that the world's top oarsmen, used to racing over 2,000 metres on still water, flock to Henley to take part in an upstream knockout competition over 1.25 miles?
And I think in particular I contrast Henley, where you're racing 2 abreast, with the international races. You're racing 6 abreast. 2 abreast is 1-on-1, and it means intense competition. You've got to think about your opponent and only your opponent, whereas 6-lane racing, you're really more concerned with the 5 other crews, and you can't focus on one person. And that means that you're a lot more scared at the start, you're a lot more wound up before the race. And then when you add to that the huge crowds that you see at Henley, the atmosphere, the fact that it usually is the focus of most British oarsmen's season, then you've got a pressure cooker.
The other special thing about Henley is the atmosphere. There's so many people here to watch. in all the different enclosures right the way from the start to the finish. There's so much going on, and the atmosphere is electric, and it's really enjoyable to row at.
The most dramatic changes in the development of the regatta have come in the last 10 years under the chairmanship of Peter Coney. With top rowing nations like the Soviet Union, the United States and Australia now accounting for a fifth of all entries, was it his intention to further increase the level of international participation?
I think it's very important if the regatta is to maintain its prestige and its importance to rowing as a whole. But we have gone to quite a lot of trouble to try to encourage really good overseas crews to come, and happily that's been very successful. So that most years, in at least some of the events, you've got a final which is likely to be between two crews which may be world medal class, of whom one hopes one will be a British crew.
What of the future in the 21st century?
You know my view. I would like to see events for women in the regatta. I wouldn't want to see the regatta extending to 6 days in order to accommodate them. But if the special race for schools goes because the exam dates have moved back so that the schools can all enter the Princess Elizabeth, there'll be a large gap in the Saturday racing program. And I reckon that there will be room for maybe 4 events for women. And I think that the standard of women's rowing in this country has improved so much over the last 5 or 6 years that one's getting to a stage where one needn't worry that there won't be a decent standard entry to fill those events.
So good news for women's rowing. This year, the regatta stewards expect the normal entry of over 300 to double for this 150th anniversary event.
Well, compared with Henley, the Leyland Daf Power Sprint is a young event. But over the past 3 years, some 5,000 rowers from 200 different clubs have taken part in the competition, with the top prizes going to 6 different clubs. So Dan, tell me, how's it going to end today? Are you going to stick with those earlier predictions?
I think so. I think Steve Redgrave looks unbeatable in the single, and in the women's fours, it's got to be Kingston, I reckon. They had a lousy time last year, they fouled up the year before, and they're looking very mean and hungry this time, so I think they're going to get it. And in the 8, I think it'll be UL.
So the sculling final, closest to us, Arnie Lafleur for Nottingham. In the centre, Rory Henderson for Imperial College, and Stephen Redgrave on the far side representing Marlow. Keen to win that boat for this club, as is Rory Henderson, who's just beginning to show his true form. The outsider of the 3, Arnie Lafleur, but on his performances in the heats, not without a chance.
Well, it's in the centre there, Henderson. See him taking it off. He's been very clean and good at starting, but here he's having a bit of trouble in this rough water. He's gone off at 44. Arnie Lafleur, closest to us, off at 46. Nothing in it in these first 15 strokes. Steve Redgrave on the far side at 42. He's such a well-coordinated sculler. His legs and back driving together hard. Very powerful athlete, so these headwind conditions shouldn't bother him too much. And at the lower rate, it's Redgrave on the far side who's moving up on the other 2. The New Zealander Lafleur, yet again in this blue lane, where it's really quite rough. He's handling it well at 41. Both sculls going very deep, though. You can see that. He's up against 2 of the best scullers in Britain. Redgrave at 38. We're a little upset there, but he's powering away, and he's so good over the second half.
Well, coming into the second half, and remember, this is not about the clock. It's first across the line that takes the title and wins that new racing boat. And Rory digging in here, but a mistake there.
Yeah, Rory having a little bit of trouble there. Lafleur, least experienced of these scullers. He's doing all he can to live with them. And Redgrave stretching out beautifully there. He seems to get that extra bit forward, that extra little bit of run out of his boat. And that's why he's cruising home at 36. No mistakes, and he's well on top here. Ergo sprint champion. Henderson trying to get up with him. Real battle there from him and Lafleur, but Redgrave dominant here.
And Stephen Redgrave, who doesn't get too many opportunities to perform in front of a British crowd, he's really going to enjoy this. He's clear, he's going to take the boat and win it for Marlow and complete the double. And he does it now ahead of Rory Henderson, who's a good second, with Arnie Lafleur in 3rd place.
Terrific demonstration of power sculling from Steve Redgrave. And Henderson probably a bit disappointed, but losing out in terms of weight into that headwind. And Lafleur, the least experienced, probably glad to be in the finals.
For the winner, Stephen Redgrave, Britain's Olympic champion at the peak of his power.
It was certainly the hardest I rowed all day. All the others I was saving a little back, especially in the semi-final. Actually on time, I was only the 4th fastest qualifier because I got a lead. I I could take it easy because it was only the winner to go through, which helped me in the final. But I knew the final was going to be one, especially against Rory. He's a very good sculler. Very tired, wee bit disappointed, but I think half expected to get beaten by Stephen Redgrave, really.
So confirmation of the result, Stephen Redgrave the champion, and he takes away the boat for Marlow. Rory Henderson and Arnie Lafleur in second and third, and each of them receive a pair of Jerry Sutton sculls. The final of the women's Cox Fours. Over on the far side, Thames Tradesmen. In the centre, Kingston, closest to us, Birmingham. Runners-up 2 years ago, third last year, the only place they haven't been, first. Kingston in the centre, well, they've been the pre-race favourites for the past 2 seasons, but can they get it right this time? And Thames Tradesmen, with Martha Plessers at stroke, improving all the time.
Well, Kingston in the centre, favourites again. Alison Barnett at stroke, taking them off at 46. She's a little bit ahead of her crew, in fact. She's moving very, very quickly. Birmingham coming into the picture nearest to us at 44. They've both dropped Tradesmen on the far side there. Tradesmen at 44 as well. That very definite sit-up at the catch as they settled into a 42 strokes a minute. Birmingham nearest to us at 42. Sue Welsh at 3, going rather deep, and the crew looking less comfortable than usual. They're under pressure here, certainly, but it's Kingston, the heavyweight crew, already in command. About a third of a length, reaching out, using their power through the stroke, sitting back, settled at 40, stretching their lead.
Kingston's Cox, Samantha Burgess-Allen urging the crew on there as they come into the second half, but nothing between Tradesmen on the right there and Birmingham closest to us in blue for second place.
This time Kingston are making no mistakes, driving into the second half, stroke Alison Barnett. Terrific lead she's giving the crew. Lovely drive at the finish there. Birmingham getting rather short forward at 41. They're fighting to get back to Kingston. The crews are racing for oars, they're racing for boats. There are real prizes at stake here, and already Kingston can taste victory. They're over half a length clear, and they're looking great. Tradesmen struggling in this headwind, the lightweight Tradesmen crew trying to get more speed out of the boat.
Kingston well clear, and the battle still for second place. Birmingham, who are closest to us. Here they are, Audrey Wedderburn in the bow there, Maggie Jameson up at stroke, really fighting hard. But it's Alison Barnett, then Kate Holroyd, Sarah Merriman and Fiona Freckleton, and that's the 4 that are going to take the first prize. But behind them, the 2 other crews locked together. Birmingham closest to us, Tradesmen, who gets there first? Perhaps Birmingham on the last stroke, but there's the winners.
Aren't they thrilled? And at last for Kingston, third time lucky.
Kingston in a class of their own, but look at this battle for second place. Tradesmen just ahead on the far side, but Birmingham on the very last stroke, touching them off by a foot. Quite incredible.
A real fighting performance from the lightweight Birmingham crew.
But let's take nothing away from Tradesmen. They've really worked hard throughout the afternoon, Martha Plessers and her crew. But Kingston, a little bit special today.
Well, we went out there, we've had 2 very good heats, rode very well, but we knew we wanted to improve even more. And once we got to 250 metres gone, we called for a push and we went really hard. And we just moved away. It's brilliant.
We raced well. We actually, the badge I had on was we raced Kingston last week and they beat us over the first 500 by 6 seconds. So we knew we were going to have a tough race against them.
Kingston then worthy champions, and they win the new Janusek Racing 4 for their club. Birmingham and Tradesmen each collecting a set of racing blades worth £600. So now on to the 8s, the defending champions nearest to us. In the centre, the winners in 1987, and on the far side, the Cambridge University boat race crew, Nick Justice, the man at stroke. Tideway scullers, Ian Robinson there in the dark glasses at the heart of the engine room. Olympic medalists McGowan and Beattie, the stern pair. University of London really hungry to get their title back.
Ooh, Jeff Barnard at 2, nearly caught napping by the starter. It's Cox Joanna Ross calling them off the start. Strokeman Johnny Hulls for UL at 48, winding them up. I'm looking now for a stride. Scullers closest to us, looking very mean and aggressive. Staying up at 46 strokes a minute. Very hard and sharp on those catches. With 20 strokes gone in the race, that's about a third of the race road, nothing in it at all. A lot of water flying off the oars on the far side of the Cambridge crew there. Cambridge at 42 strokes a minute, moving well though. These are certainly the best 3/8s in the event.
We need this push. Let's use it. With the links now.
And UL in the centre now, up to 44, pushing hard as they come into the second half. Very fast onto the catches, and look at those legs going down. Very quick leg drive, and it's UL beginning to edge away. Scullers nearest to us, still at 42, but they're losing pace a bit, and Scullers really under pressure now. The champions under pressure, beginning to lose coordination a bit. The backs and legs, the blade tips, not quite biting. And it's UL driving harder and harder. They really are a tight, tough outfit, UL.
And into the last 10 strokes, and UL really in command. Non Rokos, what a determined look at number 6 there. Johnny Hulls looks left and right, and it's UL who are going to get there first, but look at Cambridge charging on the far side for second. But it's UL who get there first.
UL really extraordinary, recapturing the title they lost to Tideway Scullers last year. Fantastic finish from them, a quarter of a length clear.
And the battle here for second place, Tideway Scullers nearest to us, Goldie on the far side, and Scullers hold them off by just a couple of feet.
Well, Tideway Scullers will be disappointed to lose their title, but credit really due to all three crews for a fantastic race. Cambridge losing out to their fellow students from London University, Toby Backhouse, the giant three-man, and Guy Pooley at 2.
Champions once again, UL.
Last year, Tideway Scullers beat us by 6 inches, so that's our just revenge for last year, I think.
After the good rows that we had in the heats, we thought we could just sneak it. But the University of London, they're a good crew, been together for a while, and we rode our best, even though they beat us, but they're worthy champions.
Much joy then for UL, who regained their supremacy. Tideway Scullers and Goldie both collecting over £1,000 worth of blades for their clubs. And so to the presentations. The champion sculler, Stephen Redgrave, receiving from Marlow Rowing Club a new sculling boat from Chris Thornycroft-Smith, Marketing Director for Leyland DAF. Kingston, outstanding winners of the fours, take home for the women's section of their club the new Janasek Racing 4. Well done. Whilst the University of London, the fastest crew over 500 metres, are once again the champions of the eights. Their reward, the boat they've worked for over 3 months.
So, at the end of another season of power sprinting on Channel 4, we say congratulations again to our champions, Steve Redgrave, Kingston and University of London. And thanks to all the competitors who've taken part, and particularly to the 4 clubs who've helped host the event. We hope to see you in the future, but right now, from all the team here in Peterborough, goodbye.